Welcome back. We are once again staring at a blank page. This topic was inspired by an interview I had this week with a candidate in a fractional controller position for our team. And he was surprised that we had variable compensation for the back office. So I thought it would be a good topic to unwrap and talk a little bit about the value of variable compensation and how you can apply it in places where people don't really expect it. Charlie Munger famously said, "Show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome." And that's kind of the purpose of variable compensation. The vast majority of roles you'll have in the back office will make most of their money via their fixed rate, their salary, or if they're in contract, whatever their going hourly rate is. But if you can find opportunities for variable compensation, it's a really, really powerful tool to align some incentives in the back office. And so what I want to do today is get creative with that. We're going to generate some ideas, and then I'm also going to talk about some of the ideas that I've used to motivate the team in the back office. But just so we can get clear on definitions, the variable compensation is compensation that you will not get if you do not achieve a specific objective. So the part of the organization that tends to be most familiar with this is any kind of sales or commercial role, because they tend to get paid a commission for deals that actually close. There's other kinds of variable comp that have to do with achieving certain KPIs or targets. Certainly in the back office, your variable comp is rarely ever related to revenue because you're usually not generating revenue. But there are even creative ways you can get to some parts of revenue, and certainly, more importantly, probably cost management is a better area where you can focus on variable compensation for the back office. So if you're willing to be creative about it, you have a lot of opportunities. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go over to Claude and have it give us some ideas, and then I'm going to throw in some of the ones that we've done as well and talk about the benefit and what we see from those. The key thing we're going to look at is what is the positive outcome we would get from this variable comp incentive, and what are some of the negative perils. So we'll talk through those as well. All right, so the prompt I am giving Claude is, I am doing a building process show on variable compensation for back office employees. For the sake of this show, consider finance, human resources, operations, compliance, legal, and internal technology to be part of the back office. What I would like to do is generate 20 ideas for variable compensation that can apply to one or several of these functions in the back office. Make sure to attach the KPIs to things that the members of that function can actually control or have influence upon. So I'm giving it the constraint that I want these plans to apply to one or multiple functions, because there's different things, obviously, that finance, HR, and internal technology do. And on top of that, I want to make sure that the KPIs are things that they can actually have influence over. Now, there are situations where you'll do broad profit sharing, for instance, across the entire company, but that's something that you do to kind of motivate a team alignment goal and maybe spread some of the winnings around your employees. When we're talking about individual variable compensation plans, we're really talking about getting someone to perform better in a specific function. And one of the things that is really powerful, but also is a limitation of variable comp, is the person you are giving it to has to have a certain degree of economic motivation. And I've learned this over the years in many different ways, that people who are not particularly economically motivated, the variable compensation probably won't be the thing that gets them to hit that target. People who are very economically motivated, this is something that you definitely want to have as a tool in your tool belt. Now, you will allow these variable comp plans to go broadly across a department. You don't want to give different things to different people just based on motivation. You want to have some consistency there. But what I'll say is there are some people who will reach for it and really want to do it, and there's other people who will not and will need a different kind of motivation to actually get the job done. So this isn't the only tool in your tool belt, but it's a really critical one for people who are highly economically motivated. So let's see what the 20 ideas are, and then we'll discuss them, talk through some of the promises and perils of each. All right, so I want to talk through some of these, and what it did is it actually just broke them out into the different functions, which is fine. So the first four that Claude recommended were for finance. One is called the close cycle acceleration bonus, and the KPI is days to complete monthly, quarterly close. So this is the month-end process for most finance teams. What I like about this is it obviously focuses on speed and developing operational efficiency with the team. What I don't like about it is that focus, that incentive towards speed will probably produce some sloppiness and maybe people hiding the ball a little bit on some things that they're unsure of. So I am one to say that if there actually is a problem, I want to hear about it, and I don't want you to bury it in the interest of trying to put on a good face or do things very quickly. I do want to hear about the problem. So I do worry about that, especially with the finance team being incentivized in that way. Another one is forecast accuracy incentive. The KPI is variance between forecasted and actual results. I like this. This is good. It does have the problem of a lot of randomness in terms of actual results, especially when you're in a small business. You know, it's the kind of, plans are useful, but they don't actually come to fruition. They're more or less an exercise in figuring out what could possibly happen. So I worry a little bit about this because you could imagine a team that did a really accurate forecast and then had a whale of a deal come in. That's good news for everybody, and yet they don't get their bonus. So I do think this one can get messed up based on just some random outcomes. Cash conversion improvement. KPI days that sales are outstanding or days payable outstanding improvements. I love this one. This one's great. This one is directly something that the finance team can control. It's actually one that I've done with my finance team to just improve collections, improve our cash turnaround on either side of the ledger. So that's a great one. I don't think there's a lot of perverse incentives there. The closest I would say to it is they can get maybe a little aggressive on customer collections, which isn't the worst thing, but you want to make sure you have the right people with the right kind of emotional intelligence doing that work. And then we have audit findings reduction. So the KPI is number of material audit adjustments or control deficiencies year over year. Yeah, so I think this is good. However, so this is trying to create a standard around quality and trying to create a situation where people are not, just letting mistakes linger. The problem with it is it maybe in the short term would cause some people to bury information that they believe is bad news. And oftentimes I'd rather them just come out with it and say, hey, we're way off on this report, we're way off on this part of the process, and figure it out in that way. So even if it makes them look bad, I'd rather know that than find out later in an audit. Okay, so for human resources, they have time to productivity bonus, days from hire to defined productivity milestone. Yes, I love this. Now, one thing about it is HR does not control all of this. Usually it'll most likely be the manager of that team. But what I would have HR do is agree on a plan with the manager. So there's certain kinds of roles that have a much quicker ramp, and there's other kinds of roles that have a much longer ramp. But what HR can do to improve that process is, one, they can have a great onboarding, and two, this is going to factor into their candidate selection, right? So they're going to want to look for people who are able to ramp up, who are able to show progress quickly, which regardless of what business you're in, that's pretty much a good thing. So I think that would actually increase candidate quality. So I do like that one as long as they can agree on the number of days with the department. Regrettable turnover reduction, percent of high performers voluntarily departing within cohort periods. Yeah, you have to get really smart on what constitutes a high performer and keep that consistent because there's a lot of different ways people could look at that question. And another thing about high performers is some will go off to do things that they're meant to do. Many of the best people I know have gone off to start their own firms and start their own businesses. At a certain level, you can't offer them that as an employee. So to some extent, I don't know if I call that regrettable. I had a manager years ago when I left to join a firm as a partner. He just wished me well on the whole thing because he recognized it's actually what I wanted to go do. And so I think you'd want to be specific about this, and you'd want to have maybe a carve out for people who really, it's not regrettable. They're not leaving because they're mad or disappointed with the culture. They're leaving because they really want to do something different. But I'd want to get really tight on the definitions for that one. Offer acceptance rate, percent of offers extended that are accepted. I like this as long as you have good controls for candidate quality because poor candidates are very likely to accept offers. So you want to make sure that this A is only paid out after 90 days and probably a good performance assessment for the new hires, but also, just making sure that what this is measuring is that HR is creating offers that make sense. They're creating the right compensation and benefits packages. Much of that will actually come from the departments. So I like the idea that it measures that question, but you just want to be very careful about how you're controlling that. Like I said, definitely after 90 days, definitely after an employee has proven themselves. Manager effectiveness uplift. The KPI is improvement in manager effectiveness scores or completion of management development programs. The issue with this is really hard to measure. I'd want to have some kind of robust survey, something very scientific to measure the quality of management in the organization so you could actually point to this. A lot of the things that improve management are very abstract and harder to measure. So you definitely in any kind of variable compensation, my view is you always want to have a very clear target. Abstract targets like people get better or managers get better, That's really, really dangerous in a variable comp program. It will likely mean that your variable comp program is too generous or not generous enough, and it will largely just fall on your opinion of how the person is doing. So there are times when bonuses like that can be appropriate. They're certainly not what I reach for, but definitely not a way to create a consistent variable comp program. All right, so then in operations, we have process cycle time reduction, average time to complete defined operational workflows. Yep, this one's great. The only thing is you don't want people taking shortcuts on this. So if you say cut the audit period in half, but you're doing half the amount of things and actually checking, then that's not that great. But if you have processes that people have mentioned are slow and you believe you could have a better target, a great example would be something like onboarding. And that's actually something we've done in my company is improve the onboarding process immensely, try to figure out some of the things we could get done before day one and get people off to the races on their first day. So I like this one, but just remember you don't want people slacking and not doing the work there. We have first time right rate. KPI is percent of transactions or processes completed without rework or error correction. This is good if you're coming from a perspective of having problems, so you can do this as a change management bonus. But if you're coming from a baseline of not having a lot of these kind of issues, then I wouldn't create the variable comp plan, because now you're creating an incentive potentially even to create issues, or it's just never going to be hit. So you want to have some situation where 20% of the orders or transactions are have some issue with them, and you have a bonus for getting that down to 10, getting it down to 5, getting it down to 3, some kind of percentage base improvement. And I would also get rid of this after you've made that improvement. I wouldn't just keep it around, because there'd be a recognition that we're moving beyond that. We've improved that process. Vendor performance management, percent of vendors meeting SLA commitments or vendor scorecard improvements. Yeah, I like this. I think this is actually really sharp, because sometimes vendors can get away with frankly poor behavior because they're not subject to a typical employee review process, and sometimes depending on how the relationship is managed with the vendor, they can kind of just sit around. I've certainly had this experience, and I think it would be wise to have something along these lines about how are we getting the most out of our vendors, going back out to the market every year to reevaluate these things, or on some kind of cycle. So I like that one a lot. Capacity utilization optimization. This is resource utilization rates against benchmarks without sacrificing quality. Yes, measuring capacity is a classic thing in consulting, any kind of professional service business. The danger with it is not always a quality management. It's often just managing how much hours people can spend on something and do something, and sometimes that creates added work that is lower value. So most people in professional services, consulting, would agree that the holy grail of pricing is value-based pricing and not a utilization-based metric. And I also think that if you focus entirely on utilization, you will burn out members of your team. So you really want to kind of get smart. But there are definitely things you could have a utilization-oriented focus. I would say, if you're managing vendors or contractors, for instance, making sure that they're fully utilized, I think that's reasonable, because they are there, after all, to do a job, a very specific job. They're not your employees that you're pouring into and developing in different ways. So there are places you can use this, but I would be wary of it as a generalized variable comp for people. Okay, so in compliance, we got regulatory examination results. Yeah, the KPIs, number of findings, severity of findings, or no action letter outcomes. That's great. I think simple enough. If you have some kind of audit process where there's an annual regulatory examination, you basically give a bonus based on how that went. So it's kind of a bonus on the annual examination. Policy adoption rate, percent of employees completing required training or attestations. I like this one. The peril with it is that you will minimize the amount of things that employees need to do sometimes. So you definitely want to keep this consistent with having a robust enough curriculum, but you do want to make it easy for employees. So that part I do like. And then issue remediation velocity, average days to close identified compliance gaps. Yeah, I love this one too. This is really good. Oftentimes those things can just sit out there. Support teams can have a similar kind of variable comp structure where they focus on how quickly they get to support tickets. So I like that one quite a bit. All right, we're almost there. 16, legal. Contract turnaround time. Average days from contract request to execution ready document. Yeah, this is good, especially for legal teams that like to drag their feet. The danger with this is that they'll get sparser on the actual review and the things they're doing. Now, I think with LLMs and with some of the newer legal tools that are coming out, I do think this is going to become less of an issue as a general matter. I think contracts should be turned around almost, within a day in the world we live in now. Self-service enablement, that's percent of contracts completed using pre-approved templates without legal review. Yeah, I love that. That's almost like an operational metric to say, hey, let's not have to loop in the attorneys every single time as long as we can get people to accept our contract templates. I think lawyers who are systemic thinkers and not such pure kind of risk and law-oriented thinkers will be interested in that. But I don't always see that converging as a personality type. Litigation cost management, outside counsel spend against budget or matter level cost benchmarks. Yes, I think this is good. I think it enforces a kind of pragmatism that you want to have on the legal team. There are people who, for emotional reasons, want to fight every battle, but there are many situations where settling is the right choice, especially for a business that is focused on something else than fighting legal battles. So I like that one. All right, and then internal technology. We have system availability and incident response. So yeah, this is a classic uptime percent for critical systems. This is one I love. SLA for either a platform or your critical systems in IT. When users have issues, same kind of thing. How quickly do you respond to the incident? So that's a classic one. It's really good. And then ticket resolution satisfaction. Internal customer satisfaction scores on resolved tickets, not just volume and speed. I love this one. I've been talking to systems admin candidates this week, and one of the questions I asked them is, how do you strike the balance between being too relaxed, which some IT people are, and therefore creating security holes and opportunities, versus being a tyrant, which is another thing I've experienced, particularly in the corporate world, where the IT people basically don't let you do anything, and they're blocking sales, and they're just blocking all kinds of work. So there really is a balance here, and I think this ticket resolution satisfaction, I think, would start getting at that question, right? If the IT people are being tyrannical, you'll start to see that in the lack of satisfaction from other employees dealing with the IT group. Now, if there are security problems, if they're a little too relaxed, you probably don't see that here, and that's where you'd want to look at some kind of annual incident assessment. And you'll also want to have things that are not related to variable comp, just like, how are we doing on security? Are we actually investing in it? Are we building and changing that? Are we growing that? So those are ideas for variable compensation. I want to talk about two that I use for our finance team in particular. So one, it's actually a lot like the cash conversion, but it's only focused on the collections side of it. And what I do is I just have different tiers for on-time payments that we collect. And one of the things I've done with it is made it a little more flexible and not made a payment on time if it's the exact day. We give it like a 3-day window. So anywhere within 3 days is on time. And then the other thing I do that I've really liked, because this one can just grow and grow and grow, is for people in finance and frankly anywhere in operations, when they go out and they negotiate a specific savings for the company. So an example of this would be talk to a recruiter, get them to bring their rate down, go to a software vendor, get an annual discount, just take anything that we're paying money for other than, our employees and the human labor aspect, but any kind of vendor, third-party software, who knows, even hotel rates, flights, meals, you name it. If they can go and negotiate a better rate, we'll give them 35 cents on the dollar for that. And it's a one-time thing. But the idea is if you save the company $1,000, you are entitled to $350. And that is the kind of savings that we weren't thinking about. It wasn't a high priority, right? So this doesn't just happen if we get some kind of discount for a relationship that we've negotiated as an organization. But if you're just going out, looking through the transactions, figuring out what we might be spending too much money on, and there's just tons of these opportunities every month. I tell our team, just go take a look in all the transactions we've done this month. In there is hidden so many opportunities for variable compensation. So that allows them to choose their path a little bit, and I like that approach because you will often have people come to you and say, hey, how do I make more money? And it's nice to be able to give them an answer that is seemingly endless, at least provides opportunities for them to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these ideas, I'm going to throw them in the document for the show, and then we're going to do the thing that we've been doing, which is I'm going to take the transcript for the show, throw it in the last part, and just get a summary where we talk through the pros and cons, and then I'll throw that in the document as well. So let's take this, throw it over there, and then I'll create the transcript. All right, so we're back at Claude, and what I did is took the transcript of the first part of the show and said, I have uploaded the transcript of the show, which is me talking through these options. Can you create a summary with each option and my commentary? So let's ask Claude to do that, and then we will throw the final version into the show document after we take a quick look at it. Well, I've been really impressed with Claude's document creation, not only from the perspective of creating text, but also the formatting. It's done a much better job than ChatGPT with creating new documents with formatting that I specify. So I really actually benefit from that quite a bit in terms of many of the documents I create. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this into the show document here. So I'm going to upload it and include it when I put this out on YouTube and the Substack. And that is where you can find us, youtube.com/@buildingprocess, and then buildingprocess.substack.com, which is really just a podcast. I'm not writing any articles over there, but the pod feed works, and that will allow you to get it in your feed if you like the audio version. So check us out in both places. Tell your friends. The purpose of the show is evergreen content for operations. So even though I'm using LLMs and I'm using the tools of the day, the idea of incentivizing human behavior through variable compensation is going to outlive this moment. It's going to be a consistent thing that we will be able to continue to do as long as there is a market and organizations that pay people to work for them. So if that's something you do and something you like, then this is a good show for you. So check out the archive, check out some of the other things we're working on, and do send me a note if you like to discuss topics or make a suggestion for a show. I am all ears.